Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going over an election preview for Tuesday's elections. We do have a handful of states in Maine, Nevada, North Dakota, and in South Carolina that do have primary elections happening on Tuesday. And I'm going to break down in this video the closest elections that are happening, or closest most important elections I would say that are happening. This video is going to be focusing on the state of Maine. So without further ado, let's get to it. There are a handful of races in Maine. There's the U.S. Senate, 2 U.S. House races, governor's race, and that's pretty much it for the top of the line ones. You do have some other races down ballot, like agriculture commissioner, controller, mayors, other state house, state senate, and treasurers and so down forth. So there are more elections taking place in the state of Maine on election night, but the main ones that you're most likely going to be familiar with are these handful of states, or these handful of elections. So first things first, let's start with the U.S. Senate race in the state of Maine. Obviously, this one's been getting the most amount of attention, and this is Graham Platner. Janet Mills, though she dropped out of the race, is still on the ballot. So if there is the Democrats looking for that alternative candidate that don't want to support Graham Platner, Janet Mills is certainly still on the ballot. Democrat David Costello is also on the ballot as well, though I do imagine probably more likely Janet Mills, even being on the ballot, people will see her name as the governor of the state. She may get some votes there. In terms of what I'm projecting here, I think probably going to see a pretty reliable Graham Platner win, even though he does have a lot of scandals currently breaking right now. But I think we see Graham Platner win. A lot of Democrats in the state, despite the scandals, still heavily strong with Platner, saying they'll support him against Susan Collins in the general election. That matters above all else in this race. We can look closely at the general election of what a Platner versus Collins matchup will look like. The rankings are kind of in between toss-up to lean Democrat, tilt Republican. So very much still up in the air for Maine, but definitely very close. The polling data, a few recent polls have shown it being more competitive. From May 21st through 25th, the UNH poll had Platner up by 9. The UMass Lowell YouGov had Platner up by 5. Fabrizio Lee & Associates, which is President Trump's top pollster, shows a tied race. Public Policy Polling, a Democratic poll sponsored by Platner's campaign, only shows him up by 4. And I say only because that's very significant that when a poll on behalf of a candidate or a candidate's campaign shows a Democrat up by 4, that's not the best place to be in, as typically those polls overinflate their candidate by somewhere between 4 and 5%. On average, usually, so that could mean Collins and Platner are currently in a tied race, if that is what that means. But as of right now, based on the polling data, the polls would tell you Graham Platner has the lead. The historical side of Susan Collins outperforming the polls in 2020 certainly gives Collins a chance of winning as well. You could essentially call this race about as close to a pure toss-up as there really is, but expecting Graham Platner will be the Democratic nominee and will face off against Susan Collins in the general. More of like a formality. There is the potential that if enough Democrats vote for Janet Mills, maybe it becomes more of a contest, but I think Platner should win this primary really without too much of a problem there. Next, let's do the 2 House races in Maine, because this really shouldn't take too much time here. The 2nd district is going to be the main competitive one. No pun intended about Maine, by the way. The 1st district is a safe Democratic held seat, and it will be a safe Democratic held seat in November. It voted the 1st district for the Democrat Sherry Pingree by 22.3% and will be safe Democrat once again. So, in all due respective terms here, the Republican primary in the 1st district between Joshua Petrowick and Ronald Russell is really just a primary to see which Republican has to unfortunately run against the Democratic incumbent. She'll win this race and win it rather handily with that primaries underway. The 2nd district, however, is going to be a definite toss-up here. It voted for Democratic Representative Jared Golden by 0.55% in 2024 in a very close race. Golden is not running for re-election. It is an open race. President Trump won this district by 9 points in 2024. In 2020, a more favorable environment for the Democrats, Trump still won this district by 7.4%. So it's a district that usually would lean towards the Republicans in a neutral election environment. But again, midterms 2026, things are looking strong for the Democrats right now. Interesting to see how this one will shake out. In terms of the primaries, we know Paul LePage, the former governor of Maine, the Republican, will be the Republican nominee. He's running unopposed. That's why it's not on the screen here. This is only the contested races. So the Democrats that are running to face off against Paul LePage are Joe Baldacci, Jordan Wood, Matthew Dunlap, and Paige Loud. They're all running in this race. In terms of the polling, because I do believe there actually has been some polling in this race, and this primary, I think, has the potential not to be the most competitive on election night, because I think I'm going to show you here why I think it's going to be the governor's race, but there's real potential for this Democratic primary to get very competitive. Survey USA did a poll just a few days ago, ending between May 28th and June 3rd, so not too long ago now, where Joe Baldacci had 27%, Matthew Dunlap had 22%, Paige Loud had 11%, Jordan Wood had 21%. So the top three candidates, only a 6-point deficit between Baldacci and Wood, and a 5-point deficit between Baldacci and Dunlap, with still 19% of the vote. So for a race that on the current consensus House map ranking is listed as likely Republican, but on the Kalshi odds, they view it as a tilt Republican seat right now. So in a race that is probably skewing towards the Republican LePage, but again has the chance to be competitive in this election environment, a very wide open Democratic primary in Maine's 2nd Congressional District. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this primary shakes out. And then again, the winner will be taking on Paul LePage in the general election, where the early polling, a most recent poll from Pan Atlantic Research, a Democratic pollster, shows Baldacci beating LePage. The rest of the polls show LePage leading in every other matchup and every other poll, including in the UNH poll, even though the UNH one shows some interesting numbers. Very close race. From the poll back in February, LePage is up by 1 over Dunlap and Baldacci, and up by, I believe it is, 4 over Jordan Wood. So going to be a very interesting race, likely to lean ratings in that one. So definitely a lot on this channel. We talk about the Senate races, the governor's races, and even 2028 presidential race. But don't forget the House races. The House races are very important. In Maine's 2nd District, it's currently flavored to be a flip for the Republicans, but very important not to forget about this House primary as well. So that is Maine's 2nd District. That'll be an important one. The 1st District, again, the Republicans we just covered. Safe Democratic seat, not too much to talk about there. The governor's race is going to be very, very interesting because there are a ton of candidates in this race on the Democrat and Republican sides. The difference here is the Republican side, there are a lot of candidates running, though I don't think we're going to see outside of the top 2 or 3 Republicans get as much of the vote as the Democrats here. Angus King III, Hannah Pingree, Nirav Shah, Shenna Bellows, and Troy Jackson are all running for Maine's Democratic governor primary, and there's an argument to be made that any one of these candidates could win. That's how really spread out this race is in terms of the candidate support. And I'll show the most recent polling data here just to show you exactly what I mean, because you honestly kind of have to see it with your own eyes to really believe what I'm saying here. So this race to succeed the Democratic Governor Janet Mills, who I mentioned earlier. The polling in this race, again, ranked choice, I did not mention this yet. Maine does utilize ranked choice voting, so if no candidate breaks 50% of the vote, which I don't think is going to happen in probably a lot of these races, it'll go to ranked choice voting. And in the first round from the most recent Survey USA poll, that's the same poll I mentioned, and the University of New Hampshire poll, essentially tied races here. Nirav Shah's in first place at 25% on the first round. You have Troy Jackson at 20%, Hannah Pingree at 19%, Angus King 17%, Shenna Bellows 11%, and 11% undecided. So completely a toss-up race as of right now. Nirav Shah does have a lead in the first round, but again, ranked choice voting is likely going to be needed to decide which candidate advances, and then who's in first, who's in second, who's in third, anyone's guess from there. This poll does have Hannah Pingree defeating Nirav Shah 52-48, so again, a very close result if that does ultimately happen in round 4. But again, we'll wait and see how it all shakes out. University of New Hampshire's poll from the end of May shows Nirav Shah and Troy Jackson tied 28-28, Hannah Pingree down at 12%, 13% for Shenna Bellows, 7% for Angus King. Earlier on in the race, Angus King was polling the strongest in a lot of these polls. Shenna Bellows was polling in a strong poll back in October of 2025. So a lot of undecided vote. Ranked choice voting going to be used in this primary. Really anyone's guess as of right now how this is going to play out. So Maine's Democratic primary, we may not know on election night exactly what's going to happen if it goes to ranked choice voting. So we may not get all the election results in terms of the winner and the nominee on election night, but we're going to get a very big indicator at how things are going in this race if that does ultimately end up happening. So Maine is definitely an interesting one to watch for on the governor side. I'm not going to do the general election yet because we have to talk about the Republican primary as well. There are a lot of Republicans in the race. There are about 8 candidates in Benjamin Midgley, I believe it is, David Jones, Garrett Mason, James Libby, Jonathan Bush, Owen McCarthy, Robert Wessels, and Robert Charles. Now, the candidates that I think are most important for you to know are Robert Charles, Jonathan Bush, and James Libby. I would say are the 3 candidates that are probably most important to be familiar with for election night. The polling currently shows that Survey USA poll, Robert Charles has had a lead over this race really in every single poll that's been taken thus far. Survey USA's poll has Charles at 34%. Bush is in second, and yes, he is a member of the Bush family. I believe he is George W. Bush, I want to say cousin, I think it is. It's in second place at 17%. Then you have Ben Midgley at 11%, though James Libby, forgive me, he did drop out of the race, actually, so he is still on the ballot, but he did drop out. But he was polling near the second to third place, depending on which poll you're looking at beforehand. So scratch what I said about needing to know James Libby's name. I guess you really don't. But Robert Charles is polling in first. Jonathan Bush is in second. From then, Garrett Mason and Ben Midgley in third and fourth place, respectively. 18% still undecided. Again, another case of probably going to need ranked choice voting to figure out who wins here, because Robert Charles is leading in most of these polls. It's possible there's enough vote out there for him to break 50% on election night. But with Jonathan Bush, a member of the Bush family, obviously the Bushes and a lot of Republican circles, especially in the Trump MAGA era of the Republican Party, is not viewed very favorably. That could hurt him in the Republican primary, but it depends in ranked choice voting how it could all shake out. Maybe there could be enough support for Jonathan Bush to keep Robert Charles under 50% going to ranked choice voting, and then obviously we'll see anything's possible from there. But for now, I would say it looks like Robert Charles is the likely Republican candidate. Democratic side, still really too close to call on that. For the general election, no polling yet for the general, but ranging of likely Democrat to lean Democrat to tilt Democrat in this race. Going to be interesting to see how it does break out. Maine does have, I do believe, a little bit of election history here where they've never elected the same party 3 times in a row for governor, and Janet Mills has served 2 terms as the Democrat governor. So even though the Democrats are favored here, that would be breaking election history. But in an election year that is, again, President Trump's approval is not doing great, Democrats are being the Republicans in generic ballot, probably we'd see Maine go for the governor's race at probably more than 5 points would be my guess when everything is said and done. But very important primary for the governor in Maine as well. So yeah, those are the primaries to talk about in Maine. For these races, ranked choice voting is probably going to be used in most of these. I would imagine Maine's U.S. Senate race with Graham Platner probably won't be. I think it'll break 50% outright on election day. The House primary in the 2nd District, I don't believe will be settled outright. I think ranked choice voting will be needed. The 1st District, it's a 2-way race between 2 Republicans, so I think it's possible we just see one candidate win outright. Governor for Democrat, I think almost certainly is heading to ranked choice voting between those candidates. Maine, on the Republican side, governor, I think Robert Charles could win it outright, but there's a possibility it can go to ranked choice voting as well. But I think Robert Charles may be able to actually pull it out, but I think ranked choice voting may be needed there a little bit as well. In terms of what this means for the general election, I kind of covered this briefly, but for Maine's U.S. Senate race, very important role in the Senate majority. Maine's going to play with Susan Collins being the only Republican U.S. Senator from a state that Kamala Harris won in 2024. The current rankings right now, even with Platner scandals, would still, for me, have it as lean Democrat. I think it's going to be a very close race. Lean Democrat also is in between 5 and 0% of the vote. I have taken out the tilt option, which is 1 point under. So, because I think 1 point under is a little finicky to predict, because it is obviously, 1 point. Like, we're going to be 100% sure it's going to be under 1 point when everything is said and done. So for Maine, just to be clear what I mean by this also, anything that I consider to be lean Democrat or lean Republican at this point, I'd also consider to be in the toss-up category. So any state that I put in toss-up, I'm expecting a margin of victory of under 5 points. And I've seen this comment before, so I just want to clear things up here. Maine, for me, is a toss-up Senate race. And if I had to delve in deeper from being a toss-up where I would put it today, putting my own 2 cents on it and my own stake on the line here, is I would put Maine as lean Democrat for Platner, in between 5 and 0 for Platner in that race over Susan Collins. I think, again, another one where ranked choice voting will probably be needed, and I think Platner may win by right around a 2-point margin when everything is said and done. So for Maine Senate race, I would put it as lean for the Democrats. For the governor side of things, The polls or the rankings on Maine are kind of interesting because in between lean Democrat and likely Democrat. I mean, it could depend on which two candidates advance. Robert Charles, I think, is most likely to be the Republican. The Democrat side, I have no clue right now who it's going to be, whether it's Nirav Shah, Troy Jackson, Hannah Pingree, Angus King, Shenna Bellows. It could literally be any of them. I think the Democrats are definitely favored in Maine. I'm not sure if it falls under 5 points. I would probably start it out as likely Democrat, which is in between 5 and 15 points. I think right around that, like, 7-point margin or so, just because Maine is going to be more Democratic in this election environment than it would be, say, in like 2024, 2022. I think so. I think I'd put Maine as likely Democrat for now. And again, that House race, it's currently listed as likely Republican. On the consensus map, I would not disagree with that. I would put it as likely Republican for now as well. So that is my election preview for the state of Maine. I do have other election previews coming out today and tomorrow in the states of Nevada, South Carolina, and North Dakota as well. I may group North Dakota in with another state. Actually, you know what? I might do? I'm going to amend this really quickly because North Dakota only has one election that's up, one notable election. So I'm just going to do it now and get it out of the way here. This is the U.S. House at large for North Dakota. I'm not even going to make a separate video for it because, I mean, there's no point for one race. North Dakota, U.S. House at large. This is the district held by Julie Fedorchak and Alex Balaz, and it is North Dakota. It is a state that is a very safe, reliable state, voting for Donald Trump by 36 points in 2024. It is a safe Republican state. Julie Fedorchak is in her first term, or Fedorchak. She's going to win this primary in all likelihood, and even if she doesn't, whichever Republican does win, it'll be a safe race in the general election. There's really not any need to delve any more deeper into it, but because I'm covering everything in today's video, I will do so here. We'll look at the House elections. We'll look at North Dakota, because I'm sure there's people watching the video that live in North Dakota. It's like, well, no one ever talks about my state, so I'll talk about it in this video for you. The presumptive nominee is Turv Hammer, a teacher and nominee for the district in 2024, and it's a solid Republican ranking across the board. Again, no surprise, but that is the ranking, solid Republican in North Dakota. So now with that said, thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please, I would appreciate if you hit like and hit subscribe as well. And you stay tuned as I post at least one new video every single day at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And if the results are not all finalized by the time you're seeing this video, I am doing daily videos now on the California results and the governor's race and the Los Angeles mayor's race as well that I think you will enjoy if you're interested in that. I'll have that linked to the end of the video here and maybe popping up in just one moment. But yeah, for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like and subscribe. It really does help me and the channel out. And I hope to see you in a future video.